guys, it's Mimi. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new. A couple of you guys have been requesting that I make some more story time videos. So I wanted to bring you this story of the experience I had when I met David Archuleta. This is, I can't even believe I'm telling this story because it is truly one of the most embarrassing stories of my entire life. I will never get over this, and I think it probably scarred David Archuleta for life as well. So if you're watching this, David, I'm so sorry this had to happen to you. Just to preface this, growing up, when I was like a teenager, I was a huge fangirl. One Direction was like my life. I was a huge believer. I loved Justin Bieber. And of course, I loved David Archuleta. I watched his whole season on American Idol. And what was different about David Archuleta is I wasn't just a fan of his, but I was determined to marry him because we lived in the same state. He is also a member of my church, which is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as Mormons, as a lot of people know us. So for David, I wasn't just a fan of his, we were destined to be married. Just keep that in mind as we get into this story. But before we start, I just wanted to say that I would love and appreciate it so much if you decided to subscribe to my channel. I'm a very new YouTuber, so every time I see that someone subscribes, it seriously makes my whole day. I get so excited. So with that being said, let's just jump right in. I was 16 years old when this all happened, and I was working at my first job. It was at a fun center. They basically had like laser tag, mini golf, arcade games, and stuff like that. I loved that job, honestly. I really liked the people that I worked with, and it was really, really fun for the summer. So my job there was to be the what did they call it? The redemption. I was at the redemption counter. So the kids would come in, they'd get their tokens, and they'd play all the arcade games, and then they would come to me with their tickets, and I would help them choose their prizes. So I would say, okay, you can pick like 2 things from the bottom shelf or 1 thing from the top shelf. And it was so fun because I just love kids. And then like the step above what I was doing, like what the more experienced people would do, is they would actually work at the counter. So when people would come in to buy their tokens or pay for their admission to do mini golf or anything, that's where they would go. But it was at almost the same counter, so I was here at this, like this way, and then they were this way. So it was kind of an L shape, so you could like see what was going on both sides. And that comes into play later in the story. So like I said before, I was a huge fangirl, and I just loved David Archuleta. And I was just like, oh, sometime we'll meet and everything will work out. So anyway, that's where I was at. But there was an average day that I was just working at the redemption counter in the summer, and it was a pretty busy day. And I saw my friends were working over at the main cashier place, and I saw this big group of like people a little bit older than me walk up to the counter, and there was this one guy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like he's super cute. And he kind of looked familiar, but I saw him walk up to the cashier, and I kind of like looked over at him, and I smiled, and he smiled at me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like cool, because he was like a cute guy. And then it was fine, he like bought his thing, and then it was the next guest. So then a couple minutes later, my friend who was working at the cash register like ran up to me, and she was like, oh my gosh, Mimi, did you see who that was? And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, that cute guy? She was like, yeah, that was David Archuleta. And I was like, what? Are you kidding? Because like, I obviously loved him, but like, he just looked different. It's not like he looked super different than he did on TV, but it was like, I didn't recognize him in like normal clothes and at a freaking like fun center. So he had come to the fun center to like all do mini golf with his friends. So I was like shocked. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, what is he doing? Is he mini golfing indoors or outdoors? Is he at the arcade? I like wanted to know what David Archuleta was up to. And my friend was like, he just went into the indoor golf. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And I was like asking all these questions. I was like, what color golf ball did he pick out? Was he with a girl? Like, did he buy his own ticket, or did he buy for the girl's ticket too? And my friend's like answering all these, I was crazy. My friend was answering like all these questions for me, and he was with a group of people. There were girls there. He didn't buy a ticket for anyone else. And so I was like, okay, he's not on a date. We're good to go. Like I can, you know, talk to him. So I got all my friends together at work and I was like, hey, if you didn't hear, David Archuleta's here and I think that we should all get a picture with him like when he gets out from golfing. And they're like, yeah, that's awesome. Because this was a time too where David Archuleta was like really popular. I know he hasn't really released any songs recently, but I want to say this is like shortly after Crush came out. So he comes out and I make my friend go like talk to him and say, hey, like we want to get a picture. And he is honestly so nice. He was like, yeah, that's totally fine, of course. And so we all go over and I remember I was so bummed because that day I wore my hair in a ponytail and I don't really look as good in a ponytail, but I was like, whatever, I have to deal with it. I was like all nervous, but I went right up to him and I was like, I just have to act really cool and confident. And I was only 16. He was probably like 18 or 19. Or maybe older than that, I don't even know. But I went up to him and I stood right next to him in the picture. So he like had his arm around me and I was just dying. And then after we took the photo, I was like, okay, I have to make a move. I have to say something to him so that we can get married, you know, like that was the whole plan. And so after we took the photo, I was like, hey David, like so nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. I was just making small talk. But then I did have something in common with him because I had been to a vocal workshop because I used to sing. I had been to a vocal workshop with his voice coach who coached him through American Idol. So I was like, oh, that's the perfect way that I can like start talking to him and it'll be cool. And so we actually talked about that vocal coach he had for a while and he was like, yeah, I really recommend him, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my gosh, it went so well. However, while I was talking to him, I noticed something. This sounds so mean, but I noticed something about him that I just couldn't look past and I just said, okay, this probably isn't gonna work out. And I noticed that we were about the same height and I might have even been a little bit taller than him. And I was like, that's a deal breaker. I was like, I cannot like be with someone who's shorter than me because I wear heels and so I was so sad. Like everything went well when we talked and everything and he was so nice and he was such a cool guy, but I remember as soon as he started walking away with his group of friends, I started crying. I realized that it wasn't gonna work out between David and I because he wasn't tall enough for me. I didn't know he was short. Like he looked taller. Like he was young when he was on American Idol, but I didn't think he was like a short guy. And I still think, like, I don't want this to sound mean at all. If you're short, that's fine. It's just not what I was into at the time. And I was literally crying. Like I cried, like bawled. I kid you not. I go back to my counter and I just can't hold in the tears. It was so embarrassing. My manager literally came up to me and she's like, Mimi, you have to go home. She's like, you cannot work in this condition. So I got sent home from work because I couldn't stop crying. I remember calling my dad and I was just bawling. And I remember he was so worried on the phone. He couldn't understand what I was saying and he thought I'd like got into a car accident or something. So my dad was all freaked out, but I was crying and I was like, I'm coming home. And my dad was like, okay. But anyway, so I get all my stuff and I go and we had a front entrance to the fun center and then we also had a side entrance because there's a main parking lot out in the front and then there's a back parking lot where the employees park. And so I was like, okay, like just got all my stuff together and I went outside the middle entrance where the employees go out because it's near the back parking lot. So I'm crying, of course, I'm a hot mess. All my mascara is like running down my face. I look awful because I didn't like fix my makeup or anything because I was like, I'm just going right home. So as I am exiting the employee exit, I run into someone. It's so weird because no one ever goes this way. This is only where the employees go. But as soon as I walk outside, I run into someone and what do you know? It's David Archuleta. So it turns out that he and his friends parked in the back parking lot because he had a lot of fans and he like, you know, he wanted to not like get ambushed with people. So he and his friends parked in the back parking lot where I parked my car. And so I like literally, I'm not even kidding, I like run into David Archuleta, I'm bawling, and he like looks at me, he's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. So then instead of like running to my car, I turned because I wanted to go back inside and like hide and go die in a cave. And so I turn and I try to open the employee entrance where I just came from, and it locks. So people can't get in. You can only leave through that door. So him and his friends are all just staring at me like I'm crazy, and I just run. I don't even run to my car. I run all the way around the building into the front entrance of the place I worked, and then I run into my manager's office. And she was like, what are you doing? I thought you left. And I'm in hysterics now. I'm like, I just ran into David Archuleta and I'm crying. And it was so embarrassing. David Archuleta, if you ever watch this, I am so sorry. That was probably the most uncomfortable situation you've ever been in. And I mean, I don't know if he knew I was crying because I met him, or if he just thought that like something happened to me. It was just the most embarrassing thing ever. So I stayed in my manager's office for like several minutes until I knew him and his friends had left. And then finally I went to my car and I went home. But ever since then, every time I hear a David Archuleta song, it makes me remember that experience, and that was truly one of the most embarrassing experiences of my entire life. So I hope you enjoyed this awful experience for me. I hope you got some kind of entertainment factor from it. Tell me in the comments below if you've ever met a celebrity and how you reacted to it. I would absolutely love if you subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know if you like story times, and if you have any other video suggestions, just let me know. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.